Welcome to the Love Unplugged podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon. You may know me from Project Love, where we focus on operational excellence, but here we go deeper. We're your go-to for raw, empowering conversations on entrepreneurship and stepping into your CEO role with love and confidence. Each week, we'll explore everything from mindset shifts, leadership, optimal wellness, to efficient systems, all within a community of visionary women like you. Ready to get real about building a business and life you love? Hit subscribe and let's start this transformative journey together. Good morning, loves. Today I am joined by the lovely Jass Stupak of Nourish with Jass. Jass is a certified holistic nutritionist and herbalist that specializes in bloat and antifungal cleansing and helps women go from bloated to bliss. Her approach to wellness is simple. Eat well, understand your labels, which I highly agree, and focus on the positive and listen to your body. Welcome, Jass. I am so incredibly honored to be chatting with you today and to learn a little about your journey, but your expertise as well. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you personally.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Jessica. It's so nice to be on here. I love your podcast. So I feel like you gave such a great bio, but my name is Jass and I'm a nutritionist, a community herbalist, and the founder of Leaves. I specifically help my clients with Candida and parasite cleansing and gut healing. And I've been in the nutrition space for the past 5 years. And it's been such a crazy journey being able to just be like, especially with the pandemic and everything like that, seeing trends change, seeing our bodies change, and just the world of wellness as well. So it's definitely kept me on my toes, but it's been a really great transition. And I live in Toronto, but I was actually living in Vancouver for the past 4 years. And 2 days ago was the 1 year anniversary of moving back here to Toronto. So yeah, most of the work that I do is online, but I do love having in-person collaborations and also have a podcast as well where I share a lot of information about gut healing, parasite and Candida cleansing, bloat hacks, and just the world of wellness.
Amazing. I highly recommend everybody go tune into the podcast. Her information is so valuable. Your gut health is so critical for overall health. It impacts everything, your brain, everything. Mm-hmm. So I can't wait to dive into this a little bit more with you. But before we start with your expertise, I'd love to know a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey. So can you share your journey into holistic nutrition and herbalism and how your personal experiences shaped your approach to wellness?
Yeah, so I was in university when I started to, I pretty much grew up with headaches and migraines all of the time. And I was just kind of told by the doctor that it was normal to take a Tylenol when I wasn't feeling well, to take Tylenol as a preventative. And I was also on medication, antidepressants, and I had no idea that they were antidepressants either. So it was a very confusing journey, especially to go through it by myself too. I found it just very intimidating. My parents are from Europe and so very traditional, and they were just like, okay, do what the doctor says, but also question everything. And so after a while, after being so frustrated, I started to just Google stuff and I was like, this isn't normal. I'm just going to take a look to see what I can do. So I started to look into it and I noticed that there's a ton of food additives that can cause headaches and migraines. And being in my family, we ate very traditionally Polish and Slovakian food. So it was all potatoes, meat, some vegetables. If there were vegetables, they were pickled. And so the foods that we were eating, obviously love those foods, no shame on foods, but it wasn't the best thing for myself. I wasn't properly supporting myself in terms of diet. And so I started to take some foods out. I started to implement magnesium. I started to add in lemon water, and I noticed such a difference. I didn't get headaches or migraines, and this was when I wasn't taking any medication either. So I started to do more research in it, ended up finding out how much of a difference it made in my life that I decided to just finish university and go into nutrition. So that's kind of what got me into nutrition. But I always say the thing that really helped me get into my passion in nutrition and what I do right now is Candida and parasite cleansing was when growing up, I always had clear skin. I don't know how, because I wasn't eating the best and I just was living such an European American standard diet, I would say. But randomly, after getting food poisoning a few years ago, I started to experience skin issues, which was very, very abnormal to me. And I started to kind of try to figure out what this was. And after 8 months of trial and error, taking everything out, bringing other things in, spending so much money on supplements and food, I did a live blood cell analysis. Have you heard of this before? No. Okay. So it's this test that you can take, and basically the practitioner will prick your finger and take a sample of your blood and put it under a microscope. It's really cool because you can see your results in real time. So right off the bat, you can actually see what's going on in your body. So she did this and she noticed that it was parasites and Candida. And I was shocked and I was upset because I was like, what do you mean I have parasites? I haven't traveled. I haven't done like this or that. But it's actually so incredibly common. And a lot of us don't realize that, especially if you've had food poisoning. So after finding this out, I did a cleanse for 3 to 4 months and my skin went completely back to normal. And since then, that has changed my life. And it's been so amazing to help other women do it as well. And so for myself, like I've never had anyone in my family that has had their own business in Canada. And I just kind of knew I wanted to do this. When I first started school, I knew that it was something I wanted to take on for myself. Prior to going to school, I think a lot of people for nutrition think that they're going to graduate, get a full-time job, full salary, and they're good to go. But unfortunately, that's not the reality when you go to school for something that's not government funded. So I knew I had to make a future for myself, and I grinded so hard for years, and it's been amazing. I think at the core, it's really been to help people feel better and to have that moment of realization that I've had in several moments of my health journey. That's everything to me, is just being able to see people notice that they can make this change without having to go to the medical system. Of course, the medical system is so important, but there's certain times where we need it and certain times where we can do it ourselves.
I absolutely agree. What did you go to university for originally?
Originally I went for linguistics, for speech pathology.
Just very different.
Very, very different. And you know what? I remember when I left, I had all these thoughts circling through my mind and being like, was this the right choice? But now I have so many friends who are in speech pathology who are like, this is an impossible career to get into because it's so oversaturated now. So, I mean, I feel like we're in that stage, I think, where it's hard to get a job in so many places that chasing something for the stability of the job, which is what I was doing with speech pathology, I'm thankful I went for the passion and knew that I was going to work to make a living, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no stability in corporate or even in the entrepreneur game. So
yeah,
take that out of the equation when you're making your decision on what path you want to go, because you can be let go after having a 16-year tenure with a company. Like you just never know. It's such a whole other story, but let's talk a little bit more. So you were going to school for the pathology or speech pathology.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents probably had an expectation that you're going to go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
Now you switch. You're going and learning all about nutrition, and you're possibly thinking about starting your own business, becoming an entrepreneur. What was their thought pattern behind that with you?
You know what? I have to say they were so supportive. Like, I remember being so nervous to tell them, especially because, again, they're immigrants from Europe. I knew that they moved here to Canada to give us a better life. And I was surprised that they were just so open to it. They were like, yeah, that sounds great. And I think also I will say my dad is very holistic. Like I would learn a lot of things in school and I would tell him and he's like, oh yeah, I've been doing that since the age of 3. Or yeah, we were doing that on the farm. And so it's been really cool for our relationship to evolve because we have this very similar approach, but it's funny because I see it from like the holistic new century situation, and he sees it from like just like what you were doing growing up on a farm. And so it's been really interesting. They were super supportive, but I knew I was like, I need to prove this to them. And yeah, and just to everyone too, like my friends and my family, they were like, okay, like you can do this. And I remember going into school, I think I was 22 to going to school for nutrition. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so old when I finish school at 24. And now I look back and I'm like, what on earth was I thinking? Like you can make that change at 45. And it's really just like the work you put behind it. And I think that's something I would really say to people is if you're thinking of making this switch, just for nutrition specifically, a holistic nutritionist or herbalism, just know that there is a lot of work that has to go into it before you start to see results. And just in
Absolutely.
entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, it's not like a quick fix.
Yeah.
There is a phased approach to it.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, what have been your biggest lessons? Because as you know, many entrepreneurs, they have their zone of genius, their specialty,
Yeah.
they go into business, but that's not all you're going to be focused on. There's so much more that comes along with it that sometimes is a surprise for everyone. So I'd love to know from you, based off of your journey, what have been the core lessons that you've taken away?
Yeah, there have been so many, and I've made a lot of mistakes that have either cost me so much time, so much money, or just a lot of imposter syndrome, and like has really put me in the place to be like, you need to trust yourself more than other people. So I think for me, it would be knowing that it takes time to build something. I remember even when I first started my business, I was like, okay, I'm going to get clients. Like, it's going to be great. I can quit my job. That's not the case. You can quit your job in like a year or two once you feel like you have the momentum, but it takes so much time to get yourself going. And at the end of the day, like I was saying, it's the amount of work that you put into it prior to really getting to that point that's going to push you there. So definitely giving yourself time. And I think the biggest one I would say is trusting myself. I think, and like having like a really good gut check. I've had a few situations where, for example, I had this meeting with a company about leaves, which is my herbal tea company. And they were talking to me about how like they were going to get my tea in Hudson Bay and we were going to like get the tea everywhere. And they were like, so like, let's partner up. And I remember being so excited and feeling so amazing about this. And I went home, I talked to my boyfriend Dylan about it, and he was like, Jass, like listening to this from an outside perspective, like this isn't okay. And I remember being so upset with him and being like, how do you not see this as such a great opportunity? And he's like, because I care so much about you and I can see that they're trying to take advantage. And so I had this conversation with them, and it was like red flag after red flag after red flag. And so after that situation, I was like, I could have just given like 50% of my business away without even realizing it. And it's made me, and I've had other opportunities that have come up like this. And I'm just like, I need to put more trust into myself and know that like people will want to come into your business, even when it's a business mentor. Like even you just have to be so confident in what you're doing and take the additional questions to really understand what's going on before you just give any part of your business away.
That's great advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard like when you're having these conversations that you've probably hasn't like you haven't gotten education or training and like all these types of things, and you're stepping into this world where you're having to negotiate, and it's hard to know what you don't like. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to have people around you to kind of see where the blind spots are as well.
Totally. Have you had those situations ever happen to you?
Mine has been more so with mentors and coaches and
Yeah.
whatnot, and relying too heavily on them
Yes.
versus
Okay. Yeah.
going inward.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes sense too, because it's sometimes like you invest in this coach. So you really want to give like the 120% that you can, but you have to remember that at the end of the day, it's your business and you have full control over it.
Yeah, I know. I kind of went into it a couple times with the expectation that a coach would solve the issue or,
Right.
magically, catapult me or something like that. But
Yes.
I'm here to say that like no coach is ever going to change the trajectory of your business but you.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
you can have the best coach in the world, but if you are not in tune with what your audience
Mm-hmm.
needs, what you feel is
Mm-hmm.
right for your business, and you do the work,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
It's so true. And I think too, it's like, and exactly like you rely so heavily on them. I just recently, 2 years ago, worked with a coach, and I remember being like, okay, I want to work on this, 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 and this. And I was like, wait, I have to do all the work. I have to put like the 30 hours into changing this. Like she's going to give me guidance and support and can look over things, but I have to be the one that's making all these changes. And it's also like one of those things where even with business coaches too, I would say to anyone listening, if you're thinking of it, like go on discovery calls with a few and see which one resonates with you most. I'm currently working with a mentor for leaves, and it's been I've never had someone so dialed into my business that has helped me propel so much further, because she'll look at my website after I've had a lot of business coaches look at my website too and be like, Jass, you need to change this. This makes no sense. Or like, okay, let's do this and change it over. And it's just been so helpful. But at the end of the day, it's like that long list of tasks is on you to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now let's dive into your expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look, wellness is a word that is thrown around a ton and it has different meanings and everybody kind of sees a different perspective on it. So what does it mean to you?
I think my meaning of wellness has changed so much in the past few years. I think if you were to ask me a few years ago, I would say taking care of yourself, eating only whole foods, taking all the vitamins and supplementation that you need, removing all artificial sweeteners and refined sugars from your diet. And I think that that's when I was way more extreme in the sense of like not having enough grace for the fact that wellness can also mean enjoying life and does mean enjoying life. And so for me, I think when I explain it to everyone as a whole, it's feeling a little bit better than good. And I think for example, I have a client right now who is a mom and has 10 minutes out of the day to work on herself. And I'm like, as long as we get you to feeling good and a little bit better than good, that's all we can do right now. And I think, we'll see on TikTok and Instagram, all of these like very beautiful aesthetic morning routines that have the beautiful, like glass cup and glass straw for lemon water. I just want you to know, like, you can have lemon water in your old IKEA cup. It doesn't have to be so beautiful and trendy. And I think for me, I would say wellness too can be free, and it can cost low, like, no, it doesn't have to be this huge investment. And especially if you have to purchase certain things like an iPad for your meditations, just like remember there's so many little things that you can do. And that's the thing, like with those videos, I'm always like, this paints such a different picture to what the average person can actually do. So I think just feeling a little bit better than good is wellness to me.
I love that. And you don't need like those things, the iPad to like have a meditation or a breathwork session and like a fancy cup. It's not going to make you consistent.
No.
Like it's going to get you excited for like a short period of time so you have something new and shiny to like play with, but it's not going to last. You need to go beyond the aesthetics of wellness.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's like, honestly, like for me, I'll like go on TikTok every once in a while and just take a look. For me, I really love the people who just show up as they are and will just talk about wellness, or just not having to make it seem like it's this big investment that you have to make in yourself. Just like starting with habits. That book, The Compound Effect, I think that's what it's called. Mm-hmm. It's a really good book to just get you into starting habits small and staying on that routine of yours.
That's amazing. I don't know if you know Angie Green.
No.
So Angie Green Fletcher, she's very well known for like optimizing your lifestyle and your health and whatnot. But like she always says, start with everything free. These are all the things that you could do that are free, which is a massive list that will help increase your health and whatnot on so many different levels. And I love it. Like, it just seems so simple. But those simple things like totally add up.
Yeah, it's so true. Even like when you're traveling, like if you can, sometimes when I travel, I'll just go to the store, buy a lemon, and then have lemon water in the morning. It's so simple. You don't have to like spend all this money on wellness. So I think even just like kind of getting yourself away from the phone and just like, or like the smallest tip, are you getting enough water in? Most people aren't. And so that's something that you can work on for 30 days and then add something else into your routine. But having that one integral habit will make the biggest difference.
Yeah. And you don't need a Stanley
I love it.
in order to drink enough water every day.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good point, because that's exactly like how people are trying to drink more water.
This has helped me in no way get enough water every day. It's like sitting here empty most of the time.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh, have you seen that reel of like the lady carrying?
And he comes in with a garbage bag or like a garbage bag.
It's so funny. Oh my God. That's probably like, I probably watched it like 20 times, showed everyone at Christmas. I think it's my favorite video that exists.
Yeah, it's so bang on. Yeah, my husband was like laughing so hard. He's like, it's so true.
Yeah, because you have to use like half your body and your arm to just like keep it intact.
Pretty much.
So funny. I love it.
Now
but hey, if you have a Stanley, that's great. But hydrate however you can.
Exactly. Now let's dive into this expertise. So many people struggle with bloating. I have that issue sometimes. And Candida, we don't really know too much about, so let's dive into that. And they don't understand the root cause, right? So they take like a bloat pill.
Yeah.
They're not trying to figure out exactly what is causing it to potentially eliminate or fix it. They're just trying to take something that's going to get rid of it when it happens and look no further. So let's talk about these conditions and the common triggers.
I know, that's the thing. It's like a lot of people always want just like a quick fix. And especially with bloat, it is normal. If you're feeling bloated once a week because you went out and had pizza or you had a drink or you've been super stressed out, that's normal. But if you're noticing it happen every day, every few days, that's something you definitely want to look into. When it comes to Candida, so for those of you who may have not heard of it, because I know so many people don't know what it is, Candida is a specific yeast in the body, and it is healthy to an extent. If you have Candida in the body, it helps with reducing disease by creating this kind of inflammation within the cells. However, most of us often have it as an overgrowth. So when you have a Candida overgrowth, you definitely want to pay attention to this because it isn't something that's just going to go away on its own. Some of the symptoms that come with a Candida overgrowth are yeast infections being the number one, UTIs, chronic yeast infections, I should say, UTIs, bloating, headaches, brain fog, severe sugar cravings, the inability to lose weight or keeping stagnant weight in the stomach. And there's definitely a lot more I can't think of right now, but you're probably listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I have all of those. Keep in mind that some of you may not have Candida. Some of you might have low stomach acid. There's so much that goes into this that it's really hard to just kind of like give a one approach to each person. But if you have some of those symptoms, the reason and the cause of Candida and how we get it is from a variety of different things. So poor diet, poor hygiene, stress. Stress is one of the easiest and biggest ways for us to get any kind of infection, Candida, parasites, viral infections, because it puts our body in a state of inflammation. And then, of course, like antibiotics, the birth control pill, there's so many of these ways that can just make it worse. And so I always like urge people, if you are having these symptoms and these feelings, especially if it's yeast infections, bloating, headaches, brain fog, those are the biggest symptoms of Candida. I would say the ones that are screaming at you. I would really recommend just trying out a Candida diet. Have you ever done a Candida cleanse? Okay. I feel like a lot of people haven't. It's actually, people are starting to talk about it a lot more, which is great because that means more information and it's better accessible for everybody. But essentially what you would do is you're removing a lot of the inflammatory foods. So dairy, gluten, sugars, alcohols, vinegars, and some of the higher mold foods. So for example, coffee and chocolate are the highest foods in mold. So you want to be careful when you're buying them, and you also want to buy them organically. I know it sucks, but if you buy them organic, there is a much better resistance to them being high in mycotoxins and mold. So that's a quick swap. I know it can be a bit pricier, but these are two things that you really want to focus on, just spending a little bit more money on. So you're removing all these foods and you're probably like, what on earth do I eat then? There's so many other foods that you can eat. The diet more so looks like a paleo diet. So you're bringing in lots of healthy proteins, fats, lots of vegetables and fibers. I actually have an antifungal food guide if anyone's interested in it. It's on my website, Nourish with Jass, and it just tells you everything to eat, to remove, and to exclude during the cleanse. But this can give you a really good kind of feel to see if this is something that you are struggling with. I also, on my Instagram, I'm going to have to find this. If you go all the way down on my reels, I have an at-home Candida Candida test that you can do. You essentially get filtered water. First thing in the morning, you spit into this water and you'll start to see the spit either go down like a web. If it goes down like a web, that means it's Candida. If it just stays at the top or floats to the bottom without webbing, then it isn't Candida. Obviously, keep in mind that this is just an at-home test. At-home tests aren't 100% certain, but if you're having these symptoms and you want to try this out, it just kind of gets you closer to your answer. So there's so much that goes into Candida, but I think that's kind of like an overview of it. But I really urge, if you are having a lot of bloat, if you are feeling discomfort in your digestive system, getting to the root cause is going to save you so much more time and money by just doing it now versus waiting months and months. Something that we say in holistic nutrition too is, you know, if it took you 3 years to get to this point, it's going to take you at least 3 months to get you to feeling good. If it took you 18 years, it's going to take you at least 18 months. And this is obviously just ballpark, but also just kind of showing that it doesn't just switch overnight like an antibiotic, but it doesn't give you those severe symptoms and reactions post medication.
Okay. When it comes to your gut health, let's talk about how serious gut health is. I think people don't realize the connection to overall health and how much it's like the core, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's talk about what exactly gut health impacts overall and what someone should do on their journey to heal their gut.
Yeah. So your gut is rooted at the beginning of everything. So it is so important for, first off, like even just energy. Like we get energy when we are stimulating and supporting our liver. I think a lot of people think, oh, no, my liver's fine, I don't drink. It's not just about drinking. There's so many things that can impact your liver. Sugar actually being the number one cause. For example, fatty liver, the number one cause is sugar. The second cause is alcohol. And a lot of people don't realize how much that can impact it. So, for example, if you are struggling with energy, with skin, with digestion, look at your liver. Things like sugar, alcohol, obviously, not sleeping, stress, all of these can impact that and slow down your digestion. Your gut is the house for everything, for your mental health, your nervous system, for your hormones, for your detoxification. It really helps with the whole picture of it. If you are experiencing skin issues, it's rooted in the gut. If you're experiencing depression, it's rooted within the gut. We have so many probiotics and the microflora in our gut that helps to just kind of like create this ecosystem. So what I would say, if anyone is struggling with their digestion, I highly recommend checking to see if you have low stomach acid. If you have low stomach acid, you are going to often experience bloat, gas, fatigue, constipation, diarrhea, IBS. I would really recommend to try this test out. I also have this on my Instagram. I just recently posted a reel on this. It's a 3-day test that you can do that'll just kind of help you give you a better kind of standpoint to see where you're at. So focusing on increasing stomach acid, reducing packaged foods. I know that I said that like eating whole foods isn't 100% reality for everybody, but if you can do 90% of your groceries in the produce section, you are automatically going to feel so much better. And then the last thing I would say is stress. Stress is honestly the biggest contributing factor to any kind of sickness, disease, or even just inflammation, everyday inflammation, bloating, gas, constipation. So reducing stress as much as possible, I think, makes the biggest difference.
I highly agree. So you talked about food choices here. So let's dive into that. Yes, it can be overwhelming, trying to choose what you're going to eat. There's so many diets out there and so many fads, and like everyone's saying, go all vegan, or, do this and do that. And like, I know I've switched to mostly carnivore, which has helped me quite a bit. Yeah,
amazing.
I was very much like vegan vegetarian, like very little meat at all. And I felt so sick. Like I was just like so not feeling myself whatsoever for a long time. And I had to switch my diet. I did like blood work and all that type of stuff. And everything that I was eating was like the exact opposite of what my body needed, right? Wow. It might work for other people, but you definitely need to be aware of what's going on in your body and how you're feeling and stuff like that. And be open to getting tested to see like exactly what needs to change.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Let's talk about,
Sorry, I was going to say that's amazing. It's so incredible though to hear you say that you were like mostly vegan and then completely switched it, and it makes sense. Like so many people who are vegan, they're craving like the burger alternatives, the meat alternatives, but it's like your body's just trying to tell you something, and it's so important to listen to it. So good for you. That's incredible.
And I'm still like, I have moments where I'm like, I'm craving like a big salad, or I miss tofu, or like stuff like that. But I just know that, or like kombucha, can't have it. Can't have it. Not that kombucha is vegan, but like the yeast in it was not good for my body.
For sure. And so essentially like right now, are you just doing meats and not like vegetables and everything?
I would say 85%.
Okay.
Meat.
Amazing.
So my husband is full on carnivore, and he's right now doing like straight up just meat and salts and fats type thing, like nothing else. And he's the cook in the house. So I hate cooking. I can't even get my eggs right, to be honest.
Oh, really?
So me cooking vegetables, it's not a common occurrence.
Yeah.
So I'm primarily meats, and it's a huge change, but I feel better in my body. I'm not 100% there, but definitely a huge change.
It's amazing. Did your body react at all when you made that change just from predominantly vegan to carnivore?
The biggest, and this is probably TMI, but the biggest thing is like the bowel movements.
Yeah.
Because I was not eating a lot of healthy fats, like avocado and whatnot, but like not meat fats and stuff like that. And my husband trying to get me to eat like the meat fats. I was like so opposed to it, and he'd have to force it, and he's like, come on, you need healthy fats. And I'm like, no, I'm like, it's gross. So that was probably the biggest thing that impacted me, was like, and apparently with going carnivore, it happens. Like, it's a common occurrence to have a little bit of a struggle digestion wise at first, until you find the right balance of protein versus fats.
Yeah. It makes sense too, because you are going from like not eating any meat at all to predominantly meat. So I'm sure like your body is even trying to adjust. I've had clients who have gone from veganism to just like adding in bone broth, and their bodies like just have a really hard time digesting it at first. And then after, they're like, how I knew I needed this. I don't know why I waited so long. So it's very interesting. That transition is so, like, just so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. Yeah, food is everything. So let's talk about food choices. Let's talk about some guidance of what to avoid for optimal gut health.
Yeah. So firstly, obviously everybody is different, but if I were to give like a kind of like for everyone, I would say be mindful of your intolerances. I know so many of us know we're intolerant to dairy, but we're like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to have it. It's fine. I'll deal with it tomorrow. That causes a lot of inflammation on your body. And so I always, like, even for myself, I thankfully can digest dairy and gluten, but I know that there's certain things that I shouldn't be eating because I'll get like, my skin will get inflamed or whatever it may be. I really do try my best to remove those intolerances, because it adds way more inflammation on your body than something like an artificial sweetener would. So keep in mind your personal intolerances. But in a whole picture, I would say when it comes to foods, removing dairy is going to, for the most part, really support people's digestion. I know a lot of people also do raw dairy, which is a different story. I think that's totally fine. But if you think about our processed dairy, it's way too processed for our bodies to actually handle. If you are wanting dairy, just try to make it organic, or switch to something like goat or sheep. Because if you think about just the autonomy of a cow versus goats and sheep are a lot more active. They have a lot more time to run around, and they're just smaller as a whole. Plus, they're not so heavily processed as our cow milk is. So I always recommend doing a dairy, goats or sheep dairy. Sugars, obviously, like I've said too about like fatty liver, it is the number one cause to so many other issues today. If you want to remove sugars but aren't 100% ready to like remove all the sweetener in your life, you can use unrefined sugars. So things like coconut sugar, cane sugar, maple syrup. And then if you want a sweetener alternative, stevia is really great. Monk fruit is great too. Don't go too heavy on these, because the only thing so stevia and monk fruit, they are natural sugars. They're not artificial. They're not going to spike your blood sugar as an artificial sweetener would. However, when you are having more sweeteners like stevia and monk fruit, it's still giving your body that response that it wants sugar. So you'll have the stevia, but your body doesn't feel that it's had sugar yet. So it's going to continue to crave it more and more until you actually give in to the jujubes or the cookies or cakes. So that's my only thing, especially when doing the cleanse. A lot of my clients are like, can I use stevia? And I'm like, you can, but try to limit it, because your body's just going to go crazy for sugar. So those are a few things that I would recommend. Gluten, of course, if you can remove that too. Gluten causes a lot of inflammation on the body, and it's a really difficult protein for the system to digest. I think as a whole, most of us cannot digest gluten. If you are someone who's not ready to remove it, you can do something like spelt. Spelt flour has gluten in it, but it is a lot better in the sense that it digests a little differently. But it is also one of those like somewhat simple swaps. You can do rice, quinoa, that's still gluten-free, and just find like a gluten-free bread. And then, of course, alcohol, I think, is one of the easiest ones to remove and see a huge difference in. because of the nitrates and the contaminants and just the fact that alcohol is a known toxin to our body as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about yeast.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, because kombucha, I mean, people drink that left, right, and center. And it's a nice treat instead of having an alcoholic treat. But like, I never saw it in the same picture. But as soon as I had to eliminate yeast completely from my diet, kombucha was on that list. And it was like a heck no.
Yeah. And the thing with yeast is like, even with nutritional yeast, you've definitely heard of nutritional yeast? Yes. Okay. That's probably like the vegan go-to. So even with like kombucha, nutritional yeast, obviously beer has a ton of yeast, lots of foods, brewer's yeast. There's so many foods that contain yeast, especially breads and baked goods. The thing with the yeast is that it just continues to flourish within the body. It's hard to digest, especially if you have a Candida overgrowth. You're just adding to the picture. It's likely one of the worst things that you can have when it comes to trying to rid the body of Candida, because your body's just going to latch onto it. It's hard for the body to remove. And also, it's almost like, I'm curious if you notice this, when you're consuming yeast, you almost like automatically get this brain fog. Do you notice that? Like that gut and nervous system stimulation?
100%.
Yeah. That's the thing. I love kombucha, but I also limit it because I just know it tastes good in the moment, but I feel like that yeast just sits in your body. So, yeah. Do you feel clear without having it and everything?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So I had to cut out alcohol, yeast, which like was my go-to beverage of choice, which was so sad. But like, it's weird because like before I got tested, even though I was like, I didn't want it anymore. Like I felt like my body was like, no, like I don't want it. Like it just doesn't feel right. And I didn't know why, because wine was like my go-to for just a cocktail or a drink at night or something like that. And immediately got tested and I was like, no wonder. My body's telling me, like, your body knows, like, you need to be aware, right?
Yeah. It's so true. And I think like, I was actually just talking about this on Instagram yesterday. Like so many people will be like, oh, I think I need to remove the meat, or I think I need to remove the eggs or the, like the quinoa. But it's like, no, think about like what you're having on a day-to-day basis. Is it the wine at night? But we're too, what's the word? Like consumed in our favorite foods to think that they're the issue. So, removing the wine, you're going to notice a difference, and then you're not going to have to remove these healthy foods. I remember the first time I did the cleanse, I was like, oh, I think it might be the avocado. Oh, it might be this or that. So I'm going to remove it. And then I was like, okay, wait, you're super stressed out and you're having chips at night. Like maybe there's a connection there. But of course I'm like, no, that's not the issue. Like it actually, like they're healthy, they're clean, like this and that. But you have to, it's a full picture.
Yeah. Now let's kind of shift gears. That's a little bit in line with food. Let's talk about supplements.
Yes.
Supplements are like, everyone's just popping supplements left, right, and center. And of course I was doing it. A lot of people say, and I think that it's true, that you essentially like pee out a majority of the supplements. You don't absorb it as much. So I switched over to organ meat supplements.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah,
because they're more like
available.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on supplements? What should we be taking? Mm-hmm. What is actually going to make a huge difference within us?
Yeah. So I recommend, okay, so if you test your stomach acid levels, if you have low stomach acid levels, it's nearly pointless to take supplements, because if you have low stomach, you want to have normal stomach acid levels. If you have normal stomach acid levels, you can take a vitamin C and it's going to go to where it needs to be and be absorbed. If you have low stomach acid levels, your body's just not going to digest it at all. And that's where a lot of that myth of supplements getting peed out comes from, because most of the population has low stomach acid levels. However, I also do really believe that we should only be taking supplements that we know we need. Again, another Instagram, TikTok thing to be cautious of. If someone's recommending something, especially if it's a paid advertisement, just be mindful of it. You don't need it. You can get your supplementation from foods. I am someone who loves using supplementation in my protocols because of what I do, Candida, parasites, gut healing. It's really important to have specific supplements, but you also have to be mindful of it. So I would say for the average person, the 3 supplements I would say everyone should be taking is 1, a magnesium supplement. Magnesium is so important for our overall health. It's important for over 350 enzymatic processes in the body, helps with soreness, stress, fatigue, digestion, blood sugar levels, mental health. There's so many things that magnesium can support us with. So I think as a whole, everyone should be taking magnesium at night before bed to even help them with sleep. The second one, vitamin D3. Just be mindful. Vitamin D1 is synthetic. Vitamin D2 is vegan. Vitamin D3 is the one we want to be taking because it's going to give us the most benefit and that nutrition capacity. So this is really important. Even if you live in Hawaii, even if you live in the most beautiful tropical place, unless you're outside from 11 to 2 p.m. wearing a bikini or wearing nothing at all, you're not getting enough vitamin D to sustain your health. Not only is vitamin D so important for our mental health, but it's integral for our immune system as well. And we often hear it just for mood and mental health, but it is so important for just your digestive system and its well-being. And then the last one, there's 2 that I would say potentially. A probiotic is really important because it helps to just keep your gut flora on point and supportive. But there's some cases where people don't need a probiotic. If you're getting enough foods in, a lot of whole foods, you don't need to focus on one. And then the other one I would potentially say is zinc as well. If you're not getting it within your foods, pumpkin seeds, oysters, nuts and seeds in general are really high in zinc. But if you don't feel like you're getting enough, zinc is really important for the immune system, hormones, and mental health as well. So lots of supplements, but know that you can also get these from your foods. You can't get the exact amount. Again, keeping in mind, if you have normal stomach acid levels, you will get more out of the supplements than you do with food. But sometimes it is better to just get it from food, knowing that it's a whole food source. And it goes back to us talking about not having to spend on your health too.
All right. Love that. I love that you kind of broke it down a little bit further than generally heard on social media and whatnot. So that's great. Let's talk about your other business before we dive into your offerings. So Leaves.
Yes.
What inspired you to create it? Is it organic? How did you come up with the individual teas?
Yeah, so Leaves is my herbal tea company, and we have organic teas made for purpose. So we have a bloat formula, a skin formula, and a detox formula. And what kind of inspired me to do this was when I was first doing a Candida and parasite cleanse, I was learning so much about herbs and which ones I needed to take in order to sustain my cleanse, to give me the nutrients I needed, but to also be antifungal and kill off some of the Candida or parasites. So I started to play around with fennel, dandelion root specifically for the liver, and peppermint. And then I started to add more and more into this formula. I started to add in chamomile because it made it taste better. And I started to drink this. And one of my friends was like, you should actually sell this. I was making it for my family. I was making it for my friends. It's such an easy drink to have, but it's so supportive for bloat, for indigestion, if you're doing a cleanse, and it just tastes very mild as well. And so I remember when she said it, I was like, okay, I'm going to check to see how I can do this. And I did it at the most minimal potential. So I remember it coming up to $450. And I remember being like, that's too much of an investment. I can't do it. I was like, I'm too nervous to do it. I can't do this. It's going to cost me too much money right now. And I was paying rent. I was paying off a huge amount of debt, all of the things. And it's funny because when I look back in that moment, I'm like, compared to how much I spend on Leaves now as a small business, it's it's just unbelievable how much things will change and how much your perspective on everything changes as well. But yeah, so that kind of like I had bloat for the longest time, I think for about 3 years, until I decided to rebrand everything this past May, and brought in 2 other formulas. So we have skin as well, which has a lot of incredible herbs for your skin: calendula, gotu kola, marshmallow root, peppermint. And these are herbs that you're not going to often find just in any other skin formula because they're hard to source. They don't taste good unless they're mixed with a formula like ours, and they're hard for people to find. So when I was in 2021, after going through like a pretty intense medication, I had really bad skin inflammation happening on my face. And so I started to drink this formula every single day and found how much of a help it was. So I remember writing this down and being like, people need to know about this. And then our detox formula is specifically for those who need just some support with energy, with fatigue, with skin, digestion. If you're doing a cleanse or if you want to just support your gut, it has a lot of roots in it: ginger, burdock, dandelion, and then cleavers and nettle as well. And I just want to say, this is not laxative. So it is not going to make you go to the bathroom or run to the bathroom. It's just going to promote gentle everyday detox. And yeah, all of our teas are organic and here in Toronto as well. And we sell online, and then we do have some stores in Toronto as well.
Amazing. Now let's talk about your community. What do you have available to support them?
So I work with clients one-on-one for nutrition, and I do a 3-month program where we sit down and we work together for the 12 weeks to really get to the root cause of your indigestion. That's something that I've been doing for the past 5 years now. But on top of that, I also do have a Candida cleanse program if anyone is interested in it, as well as that antifungal food guide to just kind of help you understand a bit more about the cleanse. It's a very low cost ebook that'll just give you all of the foods to eat, reduce, and remove from your diet. And then obviously I have my leaves as well. And then I also do business mentoring for nutritionists. So really helping them kind of like understand what it's like to make protocols for clients, how to talk to clients, how to get your clients results, and the marketing behind, having your own business, because it's the hardest thing I've ever done for myself. But there's so many lessons that I've learned throughout it that has helped me kind of create this in a better picture as well.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody wants to learn more about you, where can they connect with you online?
You can find me on Instagram at Nourish with Jass, and then nourishwithjass.com, as well as the podcast, the Nourish podcast. And if you're interested in leaves or any of the tea at all, you can go ahead and take a look at shopleaves.co.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Jass. It's been a pleasure having you today with us. Your insights into holistic nutrition and health and the power of herbalism has provided us with incredible guidance on how to take the next step in getting to a better wellness state.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It was so nice to chat with you and get to know you more.
Thank you for joining us today. Your presence truly elevates Love Unplugged into a home for freedom-driven women who aspire to be visionary CEOs. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd be honored if you'd take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us bring more impactful conversations to our community. Let's continue to grow this empowering community together. Until next time.